Hey, so first off, I don't know if I'll even be able to watch this video myself because, my frustrations and obsessions have gotten so bad that nothing looks good enough to me when it comes to, like, me or my editing or whatever. But I still wanted to talk about this, and I know I've made videos about my anxiety, and I probably talked about OCD or whatever. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what people might not understand about OCD. If you're educated at all in mental health or, OCD or any of it, you know that whenever you're given a diagnosis, whenever anyone you know has been given a diagnosis, or whenever you hear a diagnosis, you should know that just because several people have the same diagnosis doesn't mean they're the same person, and doesn't mean they respond the same to their disorder or their disease. And OCD is chronic, and when I was given the diagnosis, I really studied up on it because I really was uneducated about it. So uneducated, in fact, that I thought it was impossible to be diagnosed with it because I thought I didn't have the stereotypical traits. Stereotypical traits, if you don't know, which you've been living under a rock if you don't know, but people usually say, I'm so OCD, or this person's OCD because they're really neat and orderly, or they keep fixing things, or they wash their hands a lot and they're afraid of contamination and germs. Those all are classic OCD traits, and they're very common, and I do have some of them when it comes to those general, like, blanket terms. But if you don't observe it in someone right away, you'll be like, well, they don't have OCD. I had a lot of emotional issues, and I thought, it would make more sense that I had a mood disorder because my moods shift. But what people don't realize is that sometimes with OCD, actually most of the time, when you have an intrusive thought or an obsessive thought, you get very frustrated, and your emotions can go from feeling really relaxed and not focusing on the intrusive thought, and not focusing on something that you want to fix, or something that's just not perfect, to suddenly outwardly throwing a fit or having a panic attack or wanting to remove yourself from a situation. I'm just starting to talk more in my social situation with friends I've been making. I've been trying to open up about it, just starting to, because I used to kind of joke about my diagnoses, and I've been given several. But I think it's time to take it more seriously because over the past few weeks, I don't know if I want to say I've seen a decline in myself, but it almost seems like it. I mean, sometimes it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. One thing I think I've had to explain to close loved ones that they will never seem to understand is sometimes, like, you could have even a messy room when you're OCD, but that's because you're too depressed about the lack of control in your life to clean. And sometimes you won't be as cleanly as usual, and they'll be like, well, do you not have OCD? Because when things are going really well and you feel under control, you're actually over cleanly and kind of overly particular or orderly. At least that's been my journey with OCD. But yeah, one thing people might not realize is, like, my OCD can be as simple as, like, I won't even adjust whatever thing is not straight in the room because I already feel so uncomfortable in my own clothing or in my own skin. And I just want to switch out my brain. And I used to think that, I'd been given other diagnoses that were kind of more rushed and given quickly, because in appearance, with my mood shifts, it seems that I have a mood disorder that gives me anxiety, but I really do have an anxiety disorder that gives me shifts in my mood. People might not realize that when you have OCD, at least when I have OCD, OCD comes out of fear, and the resulting emotion is usually frustration. So a lot of times people are very angry when they have OCD. Not everyone. I'm sure there's a lot of very sweet tempered people who hardly get angry who have OCD, because again, it's people respond differently. But I respond with a lot of frustration because I feel like things are out of control and I can't seem to control it no matter what compulsion I use, whether that's restricting food or overeating or washing my hands or quarantining myself in my room and not going out. There are some channels that are very helpful, people talking about things, but I wanted to talk about my thing because, again, not everyone has mentioned every little thing, every little tick. And then there are ticks that I don't have, like, or they come and go. I mean, sometimes I touch things, but not all the time. Sometimes I can get myself to shake someone's hand and seem normal because I know that I have hand sanitizer, or maybe I'm less stressed that day and I challenge the irrational thought because CBT is really helpful. And it's, people might not take it seriously. It's kind of scary because once you start helping yourself with CBT and you start getting better, then people assume you just don't have those obsessive thoughts. Just because I might not have the compulsions or I seem to be doing better on the surface doesn't mean I don't have the obsessive thoughts. In fact, I don't know if it's possible to ever completely get rid of them. I've had moments of peace and I've had days that I might seem like so relaxed and so chill and like nothing will faze me. But that's more about I personally feel like how I'm doing spiritually that might help, but it can only help in a moment. I don't think it could ever, unless there is like a miraculous cure for OCD, I don't think I could ever completely change. But I am very frustrated with myself and I am constantly wishing I could be a different person or just not respond to my OCD the way I do, because sometimes I'm even jealous of other people with OCD who seem to be responding better. Most of the time it's more that I just wish I didn't have the diagnosis and wish I was normal, because it really doesn't take much to set me off. I was talking to a therapist today about the fact that if my sister's wallet was stolen, she'd be really upset. She might even have a panic attack, because it's very understandable. Like, humans can relate to certain things when you react. When 9/11 happened, like when the war happens, like you can understand if people are really freaking out. But for me, it doesn't take much. Sometimes it could take a really small thing to trigger like a huge reaction. So for years, I thought I was just dramatic and overreacting. And those were the labels that were given to me. You're dramatic and you're overreacting. You're an overreactor, Alexandra, and you're dramatic. But no one gave me an actual diagnosis because for all they knew, I was getting along. I think a lot of people, do have OCD that's undiagnosed because they function really well, just like a high-functioning alcoholic. But I also think it's important not to quickly assume someone has a diagnosable OCD just because they have traits, because every human gets anxious and every human probably has things that they're particular about. But I'm actually thankful that I was given the diagnosis after given wrong diagnoses, or even if they're not wrong, just given hasty diagnoses, because this was the one diagnosis I was given that my doctor had taken a lot of time with me, observing me and speaking with me. The most important part too is that the person in my life who has seen me my whole life, my father, did confirm, which does help because it helps have, it's one thing to get a diagnosis from a professional, which is great, but it does help have someone who's observed you your whole life and kind of thought, I just thought they were normal obsessions, but it makes sense that it's like a disordered obsession. Because I've always had obsessions, I just didn't realize it was, And, I'm, there's the stereotypical things about being a perfectionist, and yes, in a lot of ways I am. Trying to obtain this idea of perfect. Again, I can't watch the video because who knows how many times I'll say the word like and be annoyed by it, or who knows how crooked my nose is and how I can't look at it. These are just small examples of my thoughts every day. For people with OCD and any mental illness, regular people in general, it's always important to have a routine and a schedule that you stick to. But now that the past few weeks, I've just been kind of losing it slowly because of events that happen, which normal people, I use that word, I know a lot of people would be annoyed by me using that word, but people that I know in my life who don't have diagnoses, they wouldn't react to the situation the same way. They would just be like, this is normal life stress. We go to sleep, we wake up, we keep going. For me, it's getting harder and harder to wake up. It's getting harder and harder to get out of bed. So depression can happen with OCD. I think a lot of people might think that when you have OCD, it doesn't mean you have, like they might think depression's separate or mood shifts are separate. A lot of diagnoses, they are different, but they can have a lot of similarities. That's why it is hard to diagnose someone. That's why I was given different diagnoses like bipolar and borderline. And I'm not discounting those diagnoses, but like, I'm just talking about my truth with OCD because I just need it out there. I don't have a huge following. I don't think I ever will because, again, my mental health is so unstable that I don't think I'd ever